Coming to paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this all-new Spinsterella story. Pre-order your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. Why are so many people here in New York City being hit by trains? That's the critical question I have to ask because I'm seeing a very disturbing trend over the last 4 or 5 years of people being hit by trains and it causing massive delays in New York City's subway system. Now, all of these people being hit by trains seems to be a recent issue that is coming up where we have a service getting delayed for almost 45 minutes to an hour as EMS has to come get this individual or the police have to do an investigation. And I haven't seen a whole epidemic of people being hit by trains in all of my years living here in New York City. Now, I have been a resident of New York City ever since I was born back in 1973, almost 52 years ago. And back in the days when I was first starting to take the train on my own at 14 years old, in 1987, it was unheard of people being hit by a train, and it was unheard of because usually most people understood that they needed to step on the platform and stay away from the platform edge. However, in the last, I'd say, 5 to 6 years, seems like people aren't participating in any sort of critical thinking or common sense when they ride the subway here in New York City, and as a result, we've seen this uptick of individuals going out on the subway platform and winding up getting hit by trains. Now, there's a theory that all of these people being hit by trains are usually due to individuals possibly being in a stupor due to the use of illegal drugs such as heroin, such as fentanyl, such as marijuana, and this basically leads to these individuals winding up being in a place where they are completely inebriated. And because they're completely inebriated, what happens to these individuals? Like in the case of heroin addicts, the heroin addict will nod and get too close to the platform, and what will happen is that the train will come into the station and wind up accidentally hitting them. Or in the case of the weed or marijuana user, what happens to that individual is that they're so high and not really aware of their surroundings that they stand too close to the platform edge, and then they wind up getting hit by a train. And that's one theory that I can speculate on as related to floating it. However, when I look at the use of illegal drugs, it was going on during the time of the 1970s. We had the heroin epidemic where people were, again, nodding, and we had a needle park. And the crack epidemic of the 80s, we had a lot of people, again, high and addicted to crack. And we also had weed in all of those eras. And even though we had all of these different drugs, there was next to no people being hit by trains to the point where it became extremely frequent. I mean, I remember again in 1987 when I began riding the train to go to high school, you didn't really hear about people, again, being hit by trains. No, usually the number of people being hit by trains was either zero or single digits, and there was either zero or single digits because most people, again, had situational awareness around them to understand where they were going, and had the situational awareness to understand where they were going, that they would not go out here and put their lives in jeopardy. Now, another theory that I have for so many people being hit by trains is people going out here and being on these devices, whether they be these tablets or these smartphones. And because they're on these tablets and these smartphones, these people are not really paying attention to their surroundings. And as they're out here scrolling blindly, they wind up, again, standing too close to the platform edge. And this leads to them getting hit by a train But I look at that, and that theory really doesn't make sense to me because we've had these devices since the invention of the iPhone in 2007, and ever since then we've had smartphones. And yes, we've had maybe one or two individuals who wound up again participating in some extremely emotional behavior because of their emotional connection to those devices, to the point where they would go on the platform, and this would lead to them being hit by trains. But usually, again, those were rare incidents, and they were not something that happened as frequently as it's happening right now. No, what's happening right now that's really, I'm thinking, is happening to people is one of those things that happened in the aftermath of the COVID-19 lockdowns. But I can't really even say that because, again, this started really around 2019 or so as related to things. I mean, around 2019 or so, I've just basically have seen this increasing trend of people here in New York getting hit by trains, and I have to wonder if it has to do with the way we are wired to think due to the overload of social media and the internet. Now, ever since around the days of 2019 and the days before the COVID-19 lockdowns, I've started to notice a pattern as related to the way people are thinking, and I'm thinking that the way people are thinking has been completely changed due to people basically becoming wedded, not only wedded to these devices, but also their whole frame of thinking completely changing because they are so connected to the internet. And because they're so deeply connected to the internet, they're not really doing out here and learning about basic life skills as related to having situational awareness and critical thinking. And I have to wonder if people are losing their ability to be able to think critically as a result of dependency on these devices. I have to wonder if people are losing their ability to think critically enough to be aware of their surroundings, because I have not ever seen this many people here in New York hit by subway trains. No, it really was not something heard of even in the darkest days of New York City, like 1970s crack epidemic and the 1980s. It was the 1970s heroin epidemic and the 1980s crack epidemic. It was just unheard of. I mean, we had, again, legions of addicts basically all throughout this city, and the number of individuals hit by trains was in, again, the single to zero digits, because people still had some sort of sense of awareness regarding themselves. No, what's happening here, I believe, is sadly a devolution of the human mind, a devolution of the human mind and the human frame of thinking. That's what I'm thinking sadly is happening here, where technology has basically led to a whole group of people winding up to the point where they're losing their overall cognitive abilities, to the point where they don't really, again, have that really good understanding as related to things. Because yes, we've had technology in the past. I mean, what we have right now is there's no need to even stand towards the edge of the platform anymore, because I remember in about 89, 90, they started running these trackers, and you could basically hear when the train was going to come. Around 1989, I remember being in the 167th Street D train station. They used to have this thing that it would make a lot of noise as related to alerting you when the train was coming. And after that, around the 2010s, we started to get LCD screens that would let you know when how many minutes the train was coming, so you could basically time things as related to getting your train. I mean, we have all this technology, yet in this technological age, so many people are being hit by trains, and people here in New York are being hit by trains with an increasing frequency, even though we have technology that lets them know when the train is coming, so you don't need to go out here and stand towards the edge of the platform and look out to see if the train is coming. This is what many New Yorkers did back in the late 80s when we had no technology, but they would stand in such a way that would basically make sure that they were safe I mean, I'm wondering what's happening to people here in New York City that they've gotten to the point where they just, again, are not looking out for their own safety as related to these trains that allow themselves to get hit. Now, there are some incidents where people have been hit by trains because somebody mentally ill pushed them in front of the trains. And again, and they'll say that it's a homeless person, but we've had homeless people in the subways back in the 80s, and again, they never really went to attack anyone, and I have to wonder why that's happening as well, because I think that's happening again due to, again, the cognitive decline of many people here in America as related to critical thinking, due to taking things like K2, or taking drugs like fentanyl, or smoking this weed, again, changing people's brain chemistry. But I also think people's brain chemistry is being altered because they're out here and, again, attached to these devices in some cases. And that's basically changing the way people think, because I'm seeing a lot of people not really doing any sort of critical thinking or having any sort of situational awareness as related to themselves, and that possibly could be because of, again, these computers rewiring the way people think, because as you're on this internet and, again, looking to get these hits of dopamine, looking to get that dopamine rush, it's basically changing the way you are wiring your brain to think, and the way people are being wired to think is making it where people are putting themselves in jeopardy. That's what I'm speculating is possibly the situation here. I'm speculating that this could possibly be one of the reasons why we have all of these people, again, almost every day and every other day, again, getting hit by a subway train or going onto the tracks and getting themselves and putting their lives in jeopardy. Or in the case of some people, like I read a recent story of a guy who was 30 years old, and he was subway surfing, and they found his body between two cars. They found this guy's body between these two cars, and as they found this guy's body between these two cars from subway surfing, I'm wondering what would make a 30-year-old man go out here and look to put his life in jeopardy. Now this I could understand coming from a teenager who didn't have any sort of real understanding about how life works. I can understand that, but a 30-year-old man going out here subway surfing, here was a man who was old enough to know better. But what I'm seeing these days is that there are a lot of people who I would think would know better, but are not really thinking like someone who would know better, because we have what I call a culture of stupidity going on, a culture of stupidity and not much common sense, because you have a lot of people, again, winding up participating in behaviors that generations before would understand and know were extremely dangerous, even in eras where we had high drug use, such as the heroin epidemic of the 70s, the crack epidemic of the 80s, and the early 90s. I mean, people still understood, again, how to stay away from the platform edge as the train was about to come into the station. But these days, I'm just wondering, why are so many people being hit by trains? And does it have to do with our technological age taking away from man's ability to think? Is it taking away from man's ability to think critically here in New York City? Is it taking away from man's critical thinking skills and survival skills that you have so many people being hit by subway trains here in New York? I mean, again, I grew up in eras that were supposedly worse than this, but I have to wonder if this technological age is dumbing people down to the point where they are becoming stupid. Is it dumbing people down to the point where people are becoming so stupid that they don't really take care for their surroundings? Is that the case that we're having these days? Because in the aftermath of the pandemic, I've noticed an epidemic of people being hit by trains, and I have to wonder if it's happening because so many of us have lost our ability to be able to think, Is that the case that's happened here as related to life here in New York? Have people, again, lost their ability to think critically about life here in this city? Have they lost the ability to have those critical thinking as related to being able to understand, that you have to have some patience when these trains come and not to stand at the platform edge? Again, or could it be that some of these people, again, are transplants who don't know the city? I mean, as, again, a lifetime New Yorker, one of the things I know to do is not to stand too close to the platform edge. And I know in this trend of people pushing people on the subway to stand all the way towards the wall, because the train is going to come into the station and getting a seat is not that important. Again, veteran New Yorkers, I mean, we know that, again, when it comes to these trains, you have to be very careful, because this train is coming into the station, again, about maybe 20 miles an hour, and if you get hit by this train, it could lead to severe injury or even death. It could lead to you possibly winding up losing your life. And I'm wondering why so many New Yorkers continue to be hit by trains, and people who come to New York get hit by trains, because we didn't have this trend in some of the worst eras in New York City history, but we've got this trend right now. And this trend right now basically is really scaring me, because I have to wonder if our technological age is dumbing people down to the point of stupid, where they know the dangers of what's on the platform edge, but they still go on and put their own lives in jeopardy. Now, if you want to check out some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find my books in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com, and you can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos talking about life in New York City, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers, Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed, all-new Esteemed series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl at Amazon.com and other online booksellers. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA from the Black Boule in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.